Odbudowa Ukrainy to jest podstawowe zadanie, ale równie ważne, a kto wie czy nie ważniejsze, jest to, co będzie działo się później. Dlatego o tym, jak zagwarantować, jak zapewnić, jak pomóc Ukrainie w uruchomieniu tej złotej ery po odbudowie rozmawiać będą nasi kolejni goście, a tę rozmowę Państwu i im zaproponuje Ignacy Morawski z Pulsu Biznesu.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ignacy Morawski. I am the Chief Economist at Puls Biznesu, Polish Business Daily. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our meeting and discussion about the prospects for Ukrainian economy after the war. I said after the war, even though the war has not ended yet. But as Joe Biden, American president, said, Russia will not be allowed a victory in Ukraine, and the huge commitment of Western countries to Ukrainian future is a guarantee that Ukraine will maintain sovereignty and independence and will be able to pursue its own growth vision. So we would like to discuss this growth vision, growth perspectives, and the opportunity for Golden Age. Why Golden Age? I will say in a minute. But first, let me introduce our great guests, which will allow us to shed light on different aspects of recovery of the economy after the war. So let me invite Ms. Iryna Kosse, the Ukrainian economist from the Institute of Economic Research in Kyiv and a senior fellow at GlobSec think tank, economist with experience in research, comparative research about economic reforms in Central and Eastern Europe. Let me welcome Mr. Jakub Karnowski, an economist from the Warsaw School of Economics, but also, very importantly, a member of Supervisory Board of Ukrainian Railways and Post. And let me welcome finally Dmytro Borodai. Dmytro Borodai, a Ukrainian entrepreneur which operates in Poland, founder of the company Ars Vision, an IT company. So we have a great group of guests who will allow us to shed light on the problem of recovery from different perspectives. Let me first say that the historical experience demonstrates that recovery after war is very difficult, long and painful. For example, recently, the research from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development showed that on average, countries which went through the war have not returned to pre-war growth path for at least 25 years after the war. So it's really a long process of returning to pre-war growth path. But on the other hand, the recent 100 years give us great examples that fast recovery and fast reconstruction and Golden Age is possible. And the best example is Western Europe after the Second World War. Western Europe after the Second World War rebounded very strongly and very fastly. Moreover, countries like Italy experienced faster growth after the war than before the war. And the first 20 years after the Second World War were called the Golden Age of Europe. So the question is, what Ukraine and its partners should do to allow the Golden Age in Ukraine to happen, to kickstart fast growth? Iryna, what's your view on the determinants of kickstarting the Golden Age?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And coming to your question, for Ukraine, it's a very challenging task because on the one hand, it should prioritize long-term recovery before short-term repair projects. And this long-term recovery should be based on some basic principles which have already been discussed and described in several documents and several research. And those principles include trust, transparency, people-centeredness, sustainability, financial sustainability. On the other hand, short-term projects are also very important, and that's my major point that I wanted to stress, is that the recovery should have begun now, and it's already ongoing. And it's very important, even those short-term repair projects, to start in Ukraine for several reasons. First, they allow the economy to stabilize. They keep people, businesses, and consumers in the area. They create jobs and they create demand, and that allows the economy to grow. Second point is that those short-term recovery projects, they are less costly now than they will be with time. It's easier to repair something quickly than to allow it to stay and to deteriorate. And the third point is that the businesses that will be sustained by these short-term recovery, they also, like, as I already said, they create demand, but it means that those people covered by these businesses will not need social assistance, so even from this point. So for Ukraine to enter the Golden Age, it needs to balance the short-term projects, which, as I said, already starting, and the longer-term projects. And for longer-term projects, the principles I mentioned, and another point which I forgot, is that for Ukraine, it's imperative that we attract private investments, because public investments and support from international donors will not be enough.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very important point that you're making here, that we should not divide our view of the future for the phases during the war and after the war. It's like a continuous process. It should start now, right? As I understand, we should think about recovery starting today. Jakub, what's your view? You are an economist in the Polish science sector and also a business person in Ukrainian enterprise sector, so I think you have very broad overview.
The development process has started already in Ukraine. I mean, even if you look at the assistance given by the world to Ukraine, we have military assistance, which is a part of the future recovery as well, because the quicker the win is on our side, the quicker the recovery process kind of this, I mean, the first phase after the recovery will start. But number one factor which will determine the future growth of Ukraine is catching up process, catching up with the other European countries, because the underlying political factor is European integration. And as you know, I've spent few months during the war, at least 2 or 3 months since the beginning of that phase of the war, which started on February 24th last year. I spent in Ukraine, and I can see that it's a must. I'm not trying to say that European integration will happen overnight on the second day after the victory in Ukraine, or that it will be an easy process, because it won't, but firm goal for Ukraine to enter the European Union is a must, and it means economically catching up process. When we look at the what we economists known as the solo growth model, we have labor, we have which is employment, we have capital, which is investment, and we have effectiveness. And the most important, it's also a result of the studies I have with my students at Warsaw School of Economics, is how effectively are these two productive factors used, which is effectiveness of the economy. What I mean by the effectiveness is institutional framework, including fighting corruption, creating conditions for which were, for example, were created in Poland 30 years ago, plus macroeconomic stability. And when we look, for example, at the macroeconomic stability for the last 15 months since the Russian invasion, it's not bad. For example, inflation in Ukraine for the last years was 26% compared to 18 or 19% in Poland. I don't think that's something which Ukrainian National Bank of Ukraine should be ashamed of. So, but macroeconomic stability is something which, of course, will allow the economy to grow after the war as well.
You said about very important process catching up. I think it's important to keep in mind that Ukrainian GDP per capita has not increased in comparison with Western Europe at all over the last 30 years, right? It was like stagnant. Only few countries in the world had a stagnant GDP per capita over the last 30 years. So it means, I think we can look positively at that there is a huge potential of catching up, right? Dmytro, here I will speak in Polish, jest przedsiębiorcą, założył firmę IT w Polsce, czyli zna ten problem z takiej perspektywy biznesowej. Jak ty widzisz możliwość tego, żeby wystartować ukraińską gospodarkę w pewnym sensie na nowo?
No, na wstępie chciałbym powiedzieć, że złoty wiek Ukrainy będzie nie tylko sukcesem mojego narodu, a to będzie sukces całego demokratycznego świata. Niestety wiele obywateli wschodniej Europy skłonni odbierać potencjalny sukces Ukrainy jako zagrożenie własnych nacjonalnych interesów. Ale pomyślmy, co będzie, jeżeli ten rozwój Ukrainy, ten złoty wiek się nie odbędzie. Jeżeli, załóżmy, zbrojne siły Ukrainy nawet uwolnią wszystkie okupowane tereny, ale życie w tych wyzwolonych miastach będzie nie do zniesienia dla obywateli. To będzie zwycięstwo wojskowe Ukrainy, będzie pyrrhusowym zwycięstwem. Europę czeka kolejny kryzys migracyjny, czekają na nas kolejne wydatki zbrojeniowe, dotacyjne, idealna sytuacja dla politycznych radykałów, idealne argumenty w ręce Rosji i innych autokratycznych krajów, wyraźny znak dla wszystkich, kto nadal dąży do demokracji. Chcecie wolności? Okej, Ukraina już ma. Chcecie takiej ruiny? No, tak jak mówili moi koledzy, dla odbudowy Ukrainy też potrzebne finansowe wsparcie, dużo zabiegów, ale przede wszystkim może zabraknąć rąk samych Ukraińców do pracy. I tu analogia z powojenną Europą, z Niemcami po II wojnie światowej jak najbardziej jest słuszna. Odbudowa Niemiec często była wykonywana rękami obcokrajowców. Tylko Turków przyjechało około 1 miliona. A moi rodacy, wracając z wojny, będą potrzebowali rehabilitacji zdrowotnej, a nie ciężkiej pracy. Będą wracać ranni, okaleczeni. Wiele milionów kobiet wyjechało za granicę. Więc to mógł być fundament tej klasy roboczej dla odbudowy. Także zadaniem dla ukraińskich władz powojennych będzie przedstawienie programów dla zachęcenia powrotu swoich obywateli, wprowadzenie programów dla nowej edukacji szybkiej, dla nowych specjalizacji. Dla ukraińskiej dyplomacji zadaniem jest znalezienie nowych kontaktów, nowych krajów, kto mógłby dostarczyć siłę roboczą. A to nie jest takie proste.
Bardzo dziękuję. Już widzę, jak polskie firmy z zadowoleniem patrzą na odpływ ukraińskich pracowników do Ukrainy, ale możliwe, że właśnie to się musi wydarzyć. To jest bardzo ciekawy argument. Okay, so I will switch again to English. Now, I would like to ask, should Ukraine copy-paste one-to-one the Polish growth model? So what Poland did 30 years ago was to open up to the world economy, increase foreign investment in manufacturing, increase exports, join the European Union, increase exports further, and grow through the, I would say, the positive cycle of growing exports and growing foreign investments, especially in manufacturing. So we started with manufacturing, then we had more business services, and now we try to advance in the value chain, both in manufacturing and business services. Should Ukraine follow the same path, one-to-one, or are there some certain characteristics of Ukrainian economy which make this path different? Iryna.
Well, I can say that you can never copy one-to-one. all countries are different, and you should always pick a tailored approach. You can pick those aspects that you think will work in Ukraine as well as they worked in Poland, but of course you cannot copy 100%. What I should emphasize with the Polish experience is that it's focus on manufacturing. I support it wholeheartedly in Ukraine. Ukrainian situation, I think it's worse than Poland had when it started its growth process. So we need to invest more in Ukrainian manufacturing sector. Although there is still debate in Ukraine whether we should more focus on areas where Ukraine is currently better off relatively, like agriculture and IT sectors, some name. But I think that this stable background of manufacturing is really important. And Poland also had a vast privatization program. In Ukraine, we don't have many state enterprises unprivatized left. All of them mostly are now privatized, so there is not very much room for flexibility here.
Thank you very much. There is a discussion in economics whether manufacturing is a necessary first step in growth or not, whether the country maybe can move already to services. So, but that's maybe another topic. Jakub, should Ukraine do copy-paste one-to-one or something different?
30 years have passed since 1989, so the world has changed. However, as you said before, Poland is a success story, despite what's happening here since 2015. When you look at the map of the world, Poland is the second country after China in terms of growth for the last 30 years. Ukraine, as you said, was on the opposite side of that picture. So basically, when we look at the conditions of growth, a lot of the conditions which were created here at the beginning of the 90s, including the Balcerowicz plan, should be taken into account when the future or the plan for Ukraine after port recovery is drafted. But of course, again, 30 years have passed. The world is slightly different. We have IT. Ukraine is great in terms of IT technologies, for example. That's something which my Ukrainian students at Warsaw School of Economics are surprised how lagging behind we are, for example, when we talk about the governmental IT sector, you know, how it's easy to set up a company, etc. And of course, it should be taken into account as well. Yep, I think I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Dmytro. You work in I'll switch to Polish. Jakub mówił o sektorze IT. Ty założyłeś firmę w sektorze IT. Czy myślisz, po pierwsze pytanie, czy to powinien być copy-paste model, tak jak Polska, dokładnie to samo, czy coś innego i ze specyficznym odniesieniem do tego sektora IT? Czy on jest bardzo prężny w Ukrainie, ale czy on może pociągnąć całą gospodarkę, tak jak sektor przemysłowy mógłby?
To może do pierwszej połowy pytania. Też uważam, że głównym takim bezalternatywnym celem Ukrainy jest dołączenie do Unii Europejskiej, do NATO. I jaką drogą to zrobimy? Tak naprawdę nie ma różnicy, oby ta droga była jak najkrótsza. Jeżeli to będzie polski szablon integracji, który 13 lat zajął, to będzie droga sukcesu dla Ukrainy. Oby my mówiliśmy o kilkunastu latach, a nie kilkudziesiąt lat. No jest kilka problemów. Nie wiem, czy da się nałożyć taki polski szablon na ukraiński rally, ponieważ w tym procesie integracyjnym Ukraina może nadal mieć część terytorium okupowanych. Chcę przypomnieć, że na przykład Krym, część południowej Ukrainy, wschodniej Ukrainy jest wpisana do rosyjskiej konstytucji jako tereny Rosji. I to jest pułapka dla ukraińskiej integracji europejskiej. Oczywiście pułapka rozstawiona przez władze rosyjskie. Nawet jeżeli dojdą do władz w Rosji grupy liberalne, to nie wiem, czy będą chcieli, czy będą mieli możliwości zmienić konstytucję tak, żeby odpowiadała na prawu międzynarodowemu. No, oczywiście są różnice pewne, gospodarcze między Polską i Ukrainą. My mamy elektrownie, czyli w Ukrainie mamy stosunkowo tani prąd teoretycznie. Mamy podobieństwa, na przykład też potencjalne rolnictwo potencjalnie silnie w Ukrainie. Generalnie jak najbardziej możemy się wzorować na przykładzie Polski, a nawet więcej, możemy prosić Polaków o bycie lobbystem, adwokatem, konsultantem dla Ukrainy na tej drodze integracji do Unii Europejskiej.
Tak?
Mogę dodać jedno zdanie. Wydaje mi się, i to jakby też inni ekonomiści o tym pisali, na przykład Stefan Kawalec, że relacje Polska-Ukraina w okresie odbudowy Ukrainy mogą przypominać to, czym były relacje Niemcy-Polska przez te pierwsze 30 lat od transformacji w Polsce.
Thank you very much. We slightly ran out of time. I would like to ask organizers if I still have 2 minutes. Is there anyone to answer me? No? Okay. That might be difficult. I still had one more question. Anyway, I would like to thank my dear guests for participating in this discussion. I think that we highlighted some certain ideas that are very important in thinking about future growth. We cannot answer all the questions here, but at least I hope that we left you with some insights and inspirations. So thank you very much for the discussion. We had Iryna, Kosse, Jakub, Karnowski, Dmytro, Borodai. Thank you very much.